You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington. Joining me, as always, Kevin Durso. Kevin, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. You had a good Thanksgiving?
Yeah, had a good Thanksgiving. A very busy weekend from kind of collectively, right? Like I had a so-called break from Wednesday to Sunday, and that was not much of a break. I was very busy through the course of it. Lots of other happenings going on around the household besides having 3 additional games to work.
I was about to say, well, the Flyers did play. The Flyers did play 3 games in 4 days, and we're here to talk about those, plus the game against Vegas. As we're diving into it, make sure you're following us on social media at YWT Podcast. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso everywhere except for Blue School, where he is at Kevin Durso. Okay, so diving right into it, I'm glad we all had a good holiday. I had a good holiday as well. I had an especially good holiday because the Philadelphia Flyers just can't lose right now. As we sit here on Monday evening, recording a little bit out of schedule, just kind of due to some holiday stuff. We are sitting here. The Flyers are on a 3-game win streak. They're off until Thursday, so we got a little bit of a gap in the schedule. Points in 5 straight games, shy of an overtime loss to Vegas. 5 games in a row here. The Flyers have looked, you've at least gotten points out of it. So where do you want to start here, Kevin? Do we want to start on Monday against Vegas?
We can, yeah. Okay. We might as well go in order.
Yeah, and I figure we'll start as low as we're going to be the rest of the week, because let's be honest, the rest of them are fun.
Sure.
And honestly, Monday kind of started out that way, right?
Yeah.
You come out, you get the first 2 goals.
You get the first 3.
First 3 goals.
Yeah,
2 goals in the first period.
Right, 2 goals in the first period. You're playing outstanding. What was the shot total after the first? It was actually a shot total after the first period was only 7-5. It didn't feel that way at all. They just kept making things happen. It was
some of the best hockey we've seen out of them this season.
Well, you know what I think it is also? I think it was at least at the start of that game, there was that little bit of feeling out process. I think the first 5 minutes wasn't a lot of shots on goal. It was very kind of casual, the way the game sometimes starts out.
Vegas is a good team. You respect their skill.
Sure. And I think it was as soon as the Flyers got on the board, as soon as you got a play, Ristolainen takes a shot, Frost deflects it, it goes in. Now you've gotten on the board. They just start buzzing after that. They get the second one, which, I don't love the goal that's given up there from the Vegas's perspective on Couturier, only because it's a great shot, but it's also from a distance, and you're kind of like, I was a little surprised to see it go in. As much as it's a great shot, I was also a little surprised to see it go in. So that's how you're down 2-0, and the pace of play just keeps getting pushed. And just when you think like, oh, intermission, you don't want to have the momentum halted, you're going to go to a pause, and now that's the opportunity for Vegas to regroup before they start the period. And 28 seconds in, you get a first. You get Emil Andre, who finally breaks through, had done, as I posted right after the goal, had done everything else you could possibly ask for him to do except for score a goal. And let's just say this one was a lot different than Matvei Michkov's first NHL goal. This was straight in. You knew who it was, and his reaction was outstanding.
That was a beauty. Absolutely. And you love to see him break through. And as we dive a little further into the show, I have a feeling Emil Andre's name is going to come up a lot. I think he's been a huge part of where the Flyers are at now, but he gets his first ever NHL goal there. Flyers go up 3-0, like you said, 28 seconds into the second period. They have all the momentum in the world. Turns out Vegas has a lot of talent. The game kind of bounces back a little bit with the Jack Eichel and Barbashev combo.
I was about to say Vegas does have a lot of talent. They're also a little battered at the moment, so it wasn't probably the full strength lineup. I would just say they still have Jack Eichel.
They still have some talent in Vegas, absolutely. And Jack Eichel is really good at hockey.
And that line for the better part of the next 8 minutes of the game, right after that goal by Andre, effectively took over the game.
They read the Flyers show for a minute there.
And to be honest with you, the Flyers realistically did survive it. As much as this suddenly turned into a game really quickly with 2 goals by that line, and like you brought up Barbashev too, they basically traded off. One scores on an assist from the other, and it's 3-2.
And then vice versa. Yep.
It was an incredibly big goal for Matvei Michkov to score toward the end of that period, toward the midpoint of that period, to kind of get it back on the rails for a little bit. It felt like, oh, here we go. They're only up by a goal. You're going to be clinging to that lead. Vegas is pushing the play completely. And you come back with that moment, and which, first of all, crowd loves when Michkov scores, obviously. Come on.
Yeah.
And it just, and it was a very timely goal, honestly. Like, to get yourself that 2-goal lead back. It's on the latter half of the period. There's just under 7 minutes to go in the period. You still kind of have a chance based on that to come out of this period still up 2 goals and be right where you were at the end of the first, and now play basically a closeout third period. And Sean Couturier takes a penalty in the last 2 minutes of the period, and Vegas, with their very good power play, does not make any mistake about it, scores almost immediately, and you're back to 4-3, and that set the stage for this third period. You knew they needed the next goal in a big way, and they just couldn't get it, and it got down to that part of the period where it's like, okay, you're down to about that 5-minute point where you play with before you pull the goalie. There's about 5 minutes left before you're going to get to that stage of it. If you can just keep defending, and they lose Tanner Pearson in coverage, the shot kind of leaks through Ivan Fedotov. Tough situation all around.
Yep.
And it was just disappointing. And more disappointing, I think, was the situation that presented itself. We had just, the show right before that game, we had done a show talking about them winning a game in overtime on a power play. And the same situation presents itself, and all eyes go to number 39. And so did they for Vegas killing the penalty. And as it turns out, it wasn't Michkov who nearly won the game in that situation. I saw 2 really good scoring chances from Travis Sanheim during that. It was, Sanheim, I think he took one timer that was stopped, and he had another chance that hit the outside of the net that nearly went. And Michkov was doing a lot of the work to get it into that position, but it was going to be somebody else maybe getting the payoff this time. And then they did try the same play. And I think that was the one Sanheim put off the outside of the net, but it was the same exact concept. Let's just throw it right across the net mouth and see if it can't be, get the goalie down, jam it upstairs, and get out of here with a win. Yeah. And it, the difference from last year to this year, right off the bat, they got a power play in overtime, and you're thinking, oh boy, this game, this might be it right here. Like, you're gonna put Michkov, Konecny, and Sanheim out there to start with this thing. Couturier is the fourth, theoretically, I guess.
But out there to win the draw for sure.
But you could interchange that piece and go, those other 3, I want them to make it happen right now.
Absolutely. Quite frankly, those are probably your 3 best players right now.
Sure. And this is a team, by the way, that from the third, and I think a lot of this did start to come down the stretch of the third period after the game was tied. This is a team that took 22 shots between the third period and overtime. Shots in overtime were 8-0 Flyers, and they could not score on a goalie who I thought for the first half of the game looked terrible.
Right. And Samsonov really turned it around, locked it down the second half. And you get a little offense, and he's able to stand tall and keep them in that game. But there were at least 3 opportunities during overtime where I swore that game was over. And at least 2 off the blade of Travis Sanheim. He was buzzing in that overtime. Yeah, he listen, we'll talk about him a little bit more later in the show too, but Travis Sanheim's had a pretty good week and a pretty good season so far.
He was also the one that drew the penalty. He just goes and drives the net. I don't even know if there was that great of a chance there on that particular rush, but he draws a penalty off of it nonetheless. Now you put yourself in that situation to still set yourself up for it. So yeah, he played outstanding in the thing. By the way, you want to hear something funny? Because I didn't think about this too much in the moment, but I did later on, considering the whole scope of the game. Sitting not too far, and this actually kind of ties in also to what we're going to talk about later, what you just hinted at, by the way, but sitting not too far down the row in press row and behind me where the scouts typically sit was Kyle Dubas. And I just kind of laughed because I'm sitting there thinking Kyle Dubas is getting the full-on Ilya Samsonov Toronto experience.
He knows exactly what he's watching.
The 750 save percentage for part of the game, and the I stop everything that comes my way brick wall Samsonov for the rest of it.
That's really funny. I didn't even think about it like that.
Right? Like, just saying, it was really funny to think about that. But obviously, like, look, you can talk about the overtime, you can talk about all the shots they took down the stretch. you lead a game 3-0 and 4-2. You want to win that game, and it was disappointing. And I had kind of, it was interesting going into that game. I had a thought right after, not too long after we finished the last show, that you got, okay, even though it wasn't a pretty win by any stretch, you got your win against Chicago in overtime. You've got, not to jump ahead of the Vegas game, but you've got Nashville on the schedule during the week, who's at the bottom of the standings. You've got St. Louis, who just made a coaching change. So you've got two teams that are in one part of this picture, and then you've got Vegas and the Rangers. And I really kind of thought that at this stage of the season, it was important for them to, having beaten Chicago in overtime, Nashville, you're in your head at least, and now we're going to shift over to that game very soon, but you're thinking that should be a win. And you've got St. Louis, who you hope you can still find a way to beat. You've beaten them once this year. You know they're on your level. Let's just call it that.
Right. You're in competition with St. Louis.
And I just thought it was very important for them, if they wanted to kind of have a we're back kind of moment, that you needed a 3-game winning streak in here, beating one of those other two teams. And the way they started the game against Vegas, I'm thinking, oh wow, they're going to go into the holiday with 3 straight wins. The way this is shaping up, 3-0 early second. Look at the way they're dominating this game. And then you lose it in a shootout. And even though the point is a good point, it's disappointing not to finish the job when you have those leads. So that takes us past that game to Nashville.
And Nashville was interesting because I was interested to see how the goaltending was going to be handled through 3 games in 4 days, especially
From
when
Flyers perspective, you're talking?
Yes, especially when it became clear that Sam Ersson was not going to end up being available for any of those games.
Well, see that, and I think that wasn't a clear indicator for a several day period. It was kind of still day to day. We went into some of these games thinking, we had talked about it, I think last week even, could it be Friday? I can understand if he doesn't play Wednesday, but could it be Friday? And so you were left guessing a lot on that situation. So I'm kind of with you. And honestly, what they've done, and it's pretty smart, honestly, with the 2 guys they have, is they've kind of taken a Boston Bruins approach to this thing and just alternated straight up. Fedotov played Monday, Kolosov's going Wednesday. Fedotov's getting Friday, Kolosov's getting Saturday. And we're just going to keep doing that until the situation changes, which, spoiler alert for the look ahead portion, that's going to change very soon.
Right. Well, hopefully you would think that with a 4-day break, day-to-day Sam Ersson can find a way to get into the lineup, for the next game. And obviously we'll talk about that when we get into the looking ahead. But as it sits, Kolosov did start in Nashville on Wednesday night, the night before Thanksgiving. And I mean, right away, turns out Roman Yossi's good at hockey.
Yeah, and the thing is that I understand why you don't like that goal from Kolosov's perspective. It also is a bad bounce off of Sanheim's. Travis Sanheim, who'd done everything right on Monday, has one of these moments where it's a bad luck bounce. Yeah, it's just a bad luck bounce. And to be fair, actually, you erase kind of a bad goal with another bad goal. Scott Luck scores one that everybody thinks UC Saros is going to stop 99% of the time, and you find that 1% that he doesn't. So that leaves
that one back.
You're back even. I didn't love the Ryan O'Reilly goal as much as it's a breakdown. I feel like Kolosov gets a piece of it. I don't love the way that was approached. Okay, he's given up 2, and I'm thinking this has the potential for to be a game that gets away from you. You're not playing well as a team in front of this goal.
Sloppy.
Like Kolosov had a really good first period despite giving up the 2 goals, because he made some really key saves during it as well. But you're not playing well, and this could get out of hand. One more soft goal. This feels like it's, especially considering the guy at the other end. You're now, you give up the bad bounce goal. You manage to get it back on a bad bounce. Well, UC Saros isn't giving up another bad bounce goal, is he? Or bad luck goal or soft goal. He's not giving up one. He should stop probably for the rest of the game. You're not banking on that.
You're going to have to beat him.
Right. So you better not give up another soft one yourself and now need 2 goals, because good luck getting that when you can't even get past the red line.
Yep.
I mean, this was a game played basically on half the ice surface for a large portion of it.
Crazy. Yeah.
And the interesting part about this game was that pretty much, I mean, from the time that they score to make it 2-1 and the Flyers are trailing, it's the Kolosov show for a big portion of it, just keeping them in a game,
Locked it down.
And the only reason that you don't feel confident about the way this is going, like, yes, he's keeping you in a game, is because you haven't generated anything. I think I finally put out there right around the time they were about to pull Kolosov late in the third period, that right before they get to that point, they had tripled their shot total. They had gone from 2 shots in the third period to like 6. And I'm like, well, now they're making that push, but there's only 3 minutes left. So like, it's nice to get 6 shots really quick, or like have 4 shots really quick to get you 6 in the period. But this isn't going to help you, right? Like, this isn't going to help you to make up for the last 57 minutes where you had, what was their shot total at that point? 15, 14? It was something like that. It was like 14 or 15 for the game.
It was 13 through 2.
And then they had 2 for 15 minutes of the third period. And it's like, well, you're not winning a game like that. I don't care how good your goalie's played and that you're 1 bounce away from something happening, maybe. You're not even getting there. You're not getting anything on goal. And
yeah.
Well, because this is so typical of how it goes, right? I'm typing the post to all the socials that says final 2-1.
That we're done here.
Explaining how they just couldn't generate anything. It was a great game for Kolosov, but just couldn't generate anything, all that stuff like that. And I have just barely enough time to look up to the TV to see
Morgan Frost smashing the net.
The thing off of Frost sticking into the net. I'm hearing the call practically as I look up and realizing, no, they just tied this game, that they have
I have to rewrite this whole article.
Well, no. I purposely write the lead of the story last. Most of it's just a up to the minute thing. So all I had to do was add now that they've tied the game. It wasn't rewrite the whole article at all. It was just one of these things where I'm like, they have no business winning this game. How is this possible? How does this happen in this situation? That it wasn't even like down to, they were looking for on the broadcast. You actually hear them as the call goes on. They're looking for an icing with 15, 16 seconds left as it's down the other end, and they don't get it. And I'm thinking at that moment, well, if you couldn't get the icing call there, time's just going to run out on you because you're going to have basically 1 entry left. And sure enough, it was a perfect entry. Credit to Travis Sanheim for getting a stick on the initial chance toward the net, because I think that creates some deception there. Absolutely. And slows the play down. So Frost is able to now put his stick straight on the ice, hits off of his stick, shoots up over the pad of Saros. And
spectacular flash.
And you love to see moments I love the bench shot after that, because the look on both John Tortorella and Rocky Thompson's face are just this absolute what kind of grin that says,
we just stole a point.
Right. And laughing
at that point, that's all they know.
But I think also there is a real John Tortorella can come out after a game like this and give you 45 seconds of a press conference and be the way that he is sometimes in a press conference, while being as excited as he looked on the bench for the rest of the guys that they even got the point. He might be critical of it in front of the media because that's his act.
It's his job. Yeah.
But he is going to have this that look on his face on the bench with the guys good for you guys for doing that. We hung in there. I don't have to tell everybody else that, but we hung in there, and I'm feeling good about that.
By the way, I think you're pronouncing his name wrong. I think it's actually pronounced Jack Adams.
I understand.
Because listen, we're gonna get into this a little bit later in the show.
Just trying to remember. I'm just trying to remember the part earlier in the year. We'll get to it obviously, but
where he was on the hot seat a little bit,
where we didn't know where this was going because of what the record said.
Yep.
That to a degree, it makes it more impressive than last season what they've done so far, because they got off to a better start last year, and this season they couldn't complete 2 passes in the first 2 weeks of the season, and now they look like a legitimate team for 2 weeks.
Yep. All I'll say, and this is a little bit of a teaser for our conversation later, is that if you tweeted something about John Tortorella losing the room when he scratched Matvei Michkov, would like an apology, please?
Well, sure, because you know what the record is.
Come on now. Okay.
Let's go to overtime of this game, because we get to the overtime part. So Frost, by the way, I also one of the things I love, and it, what, this feels very, let's call it very similar, honestly, because it was a last minute goal that kind of roughly, again, I'm finding a lot of weird parallels here with some stuff from different seasons that I've seen, different things. Like, they just had a really good month of November that ended, that we'll get to the last game of it, but ends with an overtime goal. Do you know another month of November that they had that was really good, that ended with an overtime goal too?
Right.
November 2019, when they rattled off a bunch of wins. I think they had 13 wins that month or something crazy. And it ended in a game that, again, it looked like they had no business winning. Now, not that the game that they ended the month with, they had no business winning this time around. We'll get there. But that was when Ivan Provorov scored that goal on like the rush, the end-to-end rush. And it kind of told you in that moment, hey, this team could be onto something here. Like, this might not be the same type of year you were thinking it was going to be at the start of the year.
Right, and they ended up going into the COVID shutdown as the best team in hockey.
Right. And it feels like that month kind of like that month jump started it. There were ebbs and flows to it. Like shortly after that was when everybody found out about Oscar Lindblom, and there was a little bit of a dip in play because obviously
then there was a rally around that.
But then there was a rally around it,
Yep.
and then January January was okay. February got better. By the end of February, they were the best team in the league in terms of like the last month's worth of play. Plus, it carried into the start of March. They didn't lose a game until their last one before the shutdown.
They had crawled into the top 5 of the NHL standings.
Right. It started something, right? Like that was the start of something. And last season, at the very last game in November was the game they played against New Jersey, where Tyson Forrester tied the game on a deflection in the last minute. And his reaction on that goal, which just a big goal in general at that point, he's a rookie. So like a big goal in general for a rookie, obviously, to tie a game like that. There was an excitement level to it. It kind of kickstarted off this little stretch of early December where they won a good chunk of games again. And it was like, okay, like there's something to rally behind this team in some way. They don't go away, right? Like they might not do this.
We've definitely seen that out of this team.
Right. It may not be the prettiest. They may not be equipped to win every game. They may falter down the stretch again. We don't know this part yet. But there is a certain characteristic about this team that is matching up with last year's team, in addition to other things, which we'll get to. But the one that stands out in the immediate from especially a game like this is they don't go away. That it's like they just nag at you until they get that point that they want or get that win. That was a big goal for Morgan Frost to score in that spot. Obviously, his celebration said a lot of that, to just get a key goal like that. And that set the stage for overtime. And I want to start the talk about overtime. By the way, yes, Roman Yossi's very good, and he nearly won the game in the first minute of overtime. We can't ignore that part. But then Matvei Michkov got a breakaway and hit the post as well. That's a precursor for something later on, which we'll get to. But like, just one of those cases, the puck finding him in an overtime. Don't be surprised. We'll talk about it again. And then this subtle little play off of a face-off that Rasmus Ristolainen moves it up to Travis Konecny. He kind of gets a step. There's a little bit of Couturier's got a step on his defender, and Konecny just smartly plays it to open ice where Couturier can at least try to reach for it and be the only guy who's going to get that puck. And he one-hands it into the net, and you're just like, again, you're just looking like, how? I don't know how they just won that game, but they got 2 points. And there was kind of an element where I also looked at it and went, I understand why Nashville's where Nashville is right now too, because that just seems like this feels like it's another one of those games that they just can't seem to find a way to get past themselves almost.
So I will say it does, and it's awful for Nashville, and quite frankly, good. So yeah, but
I don't feel good about it. I had them in the playoffs this year.
Well, that's okay. One thing I will say, and I do agree with what you were talking about this feeling a lot like last year, and it's kind of the vibes are starting to roll in that direction. There's a couple things that are different from last year, but I think one of the primary ones. What did we say about Sean Couturier the first half of last year? He looked good. He looked fine. He looked solid. Right? He looked like he was getting pretty close to back. I know it's taken a bit of time, and I know the first, dozen or so games weren't the most impressive out of Sean Couturier this year. But since he has started to warm up a little bit, we haven't just seen a good, solid, fine player. We are starting to see flashes of the Selke winner. We're starting to see flashes of the guy
Somewhat.
who had the 30 goal scorer, the 70-point guy. Like, and I'm not saying he's definitely back there immediately right now. It's still pretty inconsistent at this point in time. But we're starting to see flashes of excellence from Sean Couturier again. And I think that is something that this team lacked last year, was any real superstardom.
Right.
And this year you're getting it from a couple of different sources. But if Sean Couturier can contribute even a little tiny bit of it, I think it goes a long way for your team.
Yeah, well, for sure. So I looked something up really quick while you were doing this because I wanted to compare, like, and obviously the second half thing is really the big issue, right? Like, he did not have a good second half last year. That was where your big issue lied. He's at 6 goals on the season right now. Do you know when he got his 6th goal of the season last year?
It's still been in February.
No, it wasn't in February. This is what I'm saying. Like, it was that poor of a second half for him. That's
I'm sorry. Right. Okay. When did he get it last season?
December 4th.
Okay.
In fact, I can tell you exactly what goal it is because now that I'm looking at the opponent, I know what goal this is. When he scored in overtime against Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay. Yep.
So he scored the overtime winner in Pittsburgh. And that was
number 6.
That was number 6, which is what he is at currently this season. He ended up finishing last year with 11. And while through 24 games for himself, 25 for the team, obviously he did sit out a game, he's only at 14 points. Like, the assist total does not line up with being basically a third of the way through the season. It doesn't line up with his assist total from last year, but he's more than halfway to the goal total already. He is he's roughly a third of the way to the point total, right on par with last year's. But you hope there's more balance to this. You hope that this kind of sustains itself a little bit. What's really funny to me about the Couturier thing is that, especially from a goal scoring perspective, he didn't have any until these 3 games where, included the overtime winner. He had scored against Vegas. I think, yeah, he had the first one against Chicago too. So he had scored in 3 straight games with the Nashville overtime winner. And he didn't have a goal after, he didn't have a goal before the hat trick against Minnesota, and he didn't have one after until that Saturday game against Chicago. And it was kind of this thing where it's like, okay, that's great. You had a huge game that day, but
what does it do moving forward?
No, right. But there's nothing else. And there's too many games where there's nothing else. And now over the last, if I go look at his game log from from just the game he sat out because he didn't play against Ottawa. So from the game he sat out, 1 assist against Buffalo, no points against Colorado or Carolina, which there was very little to go around anyway. Goal against Chicago, goal against Vegas, goal and an assist against Nashville, and an assist against the Rangers. And then he didn't have a point against St. Louis because that was another one of those kind of,
but you still point per game, Well,
and let's be real. He didn't have a point against St. Louis, but he should have.
Oh, yeah.
He elevates a puck over Jordan Binnington's outstretched glove, and he's got himself a goal. So he should have had one, but that's beside the point. But he's all of a sudden, for 14 points on the season, to have, what is that? What was that? What was that up to? 6 points in your last 7 games?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Something of that sort, 7 or 8 games. It's like, okay, it kind of that kind of pace will get you to 50 to 55 in a season if you did that all season long. I don't know that he's going to get there this year based on the slow start, but that kind of pace can't hurt you.
And to be honest, you expect more out of his contract number, but the contract signed, it is what it is. We're living with it. But if we can get Sean Couturier back to being a 55, 60-point player, especially with the defensive responsibility that he is kind of known for, you'll take it. It's better than not having him on your team.
But he defends well still is part of the equation too. Like just over the last week's worth of games that we're talking about this week, he's a +5 this week.
Right.
which has brought him back to -1 for the season. So you figure it out from that. You know what I mean? Like his minus number was pretty through the roof at one point in time until you get to the part where he actually cut down on, you know, basically being on the ice for anything given up. He was the one who was making the plays, scoring a few goals. Like we're talking about the same guy who, when they played, you know, at the beginning of the month, the very first game they played in November was against Boston. They lost the game 3-0. He was a -3.
Yeah, it's really nice to see him having turned it around a little bit. Obviously, we hope he can keep it going moving forward here.
Sure.
But let's get into the Black Friday game. The New York Rangers came to town with their 30% of the Wells Fargo Center, as per usual these days.
Yeah, 30 to 50. Honestly, it was pretty. No,
I was trying to underestimate, but was
well,
it that bad?
it felt that way by visual.
Okay.
I should just go off of what I posted right before the game started, because I actually, it's not that I teed this up or anything like that, but I knew what was important, and the Flyers actually delivered it when they usually are on the other end of this, especially for the Black Friday game. So here was what I posted at, hang on. Of course, my phone just lost it as I was like teeing it up.
Perfect.
Right.
Perfect.
So I'll get it back really quick because it was.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Here we go. So, man, Twitter's a fun app on this phone.
So anyway, while
go ahead.
Kevin's looking that up, you can follow us on Blue Sky at YWT Podcast. Kevin
All right,
is
so
at Kevin Durso on Blue Sky.
it would have been there too. I could have just gone over there and looked too. I didn't.
Probably would have looked at it.
Yeah, probably. So it's a force of habit thing, and I've got like retweets of stuff from the Flyers account in the one, so that's probably why I'm on here. So this was literally 1:00 on the dot, so we're moments away from opening faceoff. Flyers basically need to take a road game approach to this game, in part due to the number of Rangers fans in the building. A strong start is especially critical. First 10 minutes will say a lot about how this could go.
Almost like they heard you.
Right, and I have a few tweets later as the game hit the first TV timeout. I said, first TV timeout, 6:32 into the game. The Flyers have a 2-0 lead and 8-0 lead in shots on goal. Pretty impressive.
So remember when I said that first period against Vegas was some of the best hockey we had seen out of the Philadelphia Flyers this year? The first period of the Rangers game says "hold my beer."
Yeah, it kind of did. I would love to know, because normally what this game represents, or what I've seen from this game so many years over, every year we go and do this game, especially when it's against the Rangers and it's one of these types of games, is the Flyers are the team that comes out looking like they've got the Thanksgiving hangover. Like you ate too much the night before, you're just dragging, right? I want to know what Bobby Brink had for dinner the night before, because
Wheaties.
Yes, because that was about as good as I've seen him look in a game all season.
That man was shot out of a cannon. The latest Money Puck odds came out, I believe, yesterday, and they have the Philadelphia Flyers at 30.9% to make the playoffs, up from, I think it was 8% a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling a lot of that is based on the first period of this Rangers game.
It does. It can't hurt, obviously, right? Like, it can't hurt.
They didn't just outplay the New York Rangers. By the way, the New York Rangers. They absolutely dominated every aspect of the game. Like you said, they're leading shots 8-0. You're up 2-0 in the game, and quite frankly, it could have been 3 or 4. I mean, you got Shesterkin, and he looked good.
He was the only one who showed up in the first period.
If I'm Igor Shesterkin, I'm throwing everything in that locker room after the first period. What do you mean we got outshot 15-4 by the Flyers?
Right, for real. And on top of that, like everything about that first period from the Rangers' perspective is terrible, right? They don't get a shot on goal until there's under 9 minutes left in the first period, and there's enough Rangers fans in attendance to give them a Bronx cheer over you finally got a shot on goal. Like, that was funny. That was funny to watch. I mean, we're talking about a team also that came into this game on a 4-game losing streak. That's
the Rangers
really riding it out. And
Yeah.
I'm watching this. I'm going, Adam Fox is not having a good game. Like, he's trying to make a play, and I get he's trying to make a play on the first one, but he's not having the typical, like, we've seen Adam Fox have dominant games. I'll tell you, the one that really tells you everything is eventually the Rangers do get a goal in the second period that sets the stage for hang on to your hats because we're going to play a 1-goal game against the New York Rangers kind of stuff. And they get that thing down to under 3 minutes to go. Shesterkin's to the bench. You got the whole situation lining up. And you tell me in what universe over the last decade that I've been watching this team from the same spot in the press box that Mika Zibanejad gets a chance at the side of the net, right out front, net wide open, and puts it off the side of the net.
And misses it.
Right, instead of burying it. You tell me what universe that happens. We're talking about the same guy who in the I'll call it the other COVID season, the one that was the shortened 56 gamer where you played interdivision, who played 2 games pretty much back to back, had hat tricks in both of them. I think scored 9 goals against the Flyers that year. Like, something stupid, right?
Got 2 hot takes for you here.
Okay.
Rangers hire Quenneville by Christmas.
Oh.
And the 2024-2025 Philadelphia Flyers make the playoffs.
Well, I probably could have sensed that your second one was coming. I don't know about your first one. You know what I will say about your first one?
Laviolette's primed to get fired at this point. I love Lavi. We love Lavi.
I think the seat's warm based on how things are currently going. I'll agree to that. Hang on.
On Broadway, the seat's always warm.
True, but where I will counter your point, and I'm not saying it means it's any less likely that they do it or not. If the Rangers make that decision, I'm not going to be shocked by that in any stretch of the imagination. It is New York after all. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I would qualify that in the same category as the Jim Montgomery firing, where take a longer look in the mirror because it's not your coach.
Oh, I completely agree with you, and he may go too, frankly.
I don't even know if it's a GM problem as much. I think it's you're riding out the same group of players you've been riding out for the last however many years.
Well, I mean, at a certain point, that's on your GM.
Yeah, but didn't they just recently switch GMs not too long ago? It's like then make that call eventually, but it's like I think you got to start making changes to the roster at some point. Like we're talking about a team that we're hearing talk about. Well, we might try to move Chris Kreider. We might try to move Jacob Trouba.
Jacob Trouba is going to look really good playing next to Quinn Hughes.
If they can even move him, right? Like if they can even move him
right to Vancouver.
Well, if
they
if they can even do it like that, it's not an easy contract to move. Like you can advertise it all you want to in New York and be like, we'd love to try to do this. Good luck. And guess what? He didn't play well that day either.
As we sit here on Monday evening, December 2nd.
Second. Third's tomorrow.
Yeah, that's how that works.
I know.
The Philadelphia Flyers and the New York Rangers have the same number of points. Now the Flyers have played 2 more games. So
am I allowed to add? Am I allowed to add to your whole thing right now? Because I knew they were playing tonight, so I just went and checked.
Okay.
They are the New York Rangers are outshooting the New Jersey Devils 26-13 and losing 3-0.
Yeah, they are. And by the way, I stand by my preseason prediction that the Devils are frauds. We'll get there. We haven't seen that yet, but it's coming. Don't worry. But yeah, they are handling the Rangers now.
I'll tell you the one in the Metro that's really shocking us all. It's got to be Washington.
Gotta be Washington. And especially without Ovi, when Ovi has 15 goals through his first 19 games or whatever it was, okay, sure, I get how they're winning, but they've kept it up since he's gone out.
I can't argue with a 729 winning percent or points percentage in basically almost a third of the season. I can't argue with that, right?
Insane.
Yeah. They are putting the defending Stanley Cup champions points percentage to shame with that points percentage. There is almost nobody else that I can pick out other than maybe Carolina that comes remotely close to a 700 points percentage.
Same.
Carolina's the next closest. I will say this. I will say this with a quick look at that though. Gonna be a fun down the stretch run because there's so many teams crammed together by points percentage right now.
Oh, it's gonna get this. This is gonna be a good season because they're typically in the NHL. There are 4 or 5 teams that are kind of bad and at the bottom and are happy that they're at the bottom. Right? They're going for a draft pick. They're blah blah blah. Dude, even Montreal and Anaheim want to win games and get better. Like, it's
Oh yeah.
not the league's ramping back up. Like, we don't have a Connor McDavid this year in the draft, I mean. So, like, teams whose GMs have been there for a while, looking at you, Anaheim, and the plan isn't necessarily working out quite yet, looking at you, Anaheim. The seats might be getting warm, Anaheim. Um, so anyway, speaking
All
of
right, so we're
Anaheim, no,
no, it's you want to
no,
get
but
to the
back to this Rangers game. We
okay.
didn't even really talk about the fact that Travis Konecny had 2 goals in that game and has just continued to look absolutely spectacular.
Yep, sure has.
And that's really all there is to say about it. He has been your best player, and he, that's it. That's it.
It's I'm going to tell you right now, it's saying a lot that he kind of is maintaining that best player spot when you have a player of Michkov's skill level on the team. Like, it's not taking away from Michkov at all. It's just how much Konechny's game
Oh,
has
it's a
continued to
compliment.
steady
Absolutely.
over the. I mean, I forget exactly what the time frame is. It could have just been the month of November. It could have been the last 12 games that we've talked about that like they've played really well. But Konechny's like tied for the league lead in points after a certain point, and he's up there. Like
Insane.
you're putting him in the category with like he's got more points than McDavid over that time period. He's got more points than I think he's got more points than everybody except Martin Nakash, who's tied with him.
You're right. Who has also just had a ridiculous run recently.
So that means he's got more points than McDavid, more points than McKinnon, more points than Reinhart,
Draisaitl,
Kucherov, Draisaitl,
Marner.
Kaprizov.
Yep.
Like you name it, right?
Yep. Any of the Florida monster. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
He has been an elite player in the NHL over the last stretch, for sure.
Sure. And it's been beyond impressive to watch him kind of maintain it for the course of like there. You know what else has been impressive with the two? Because we're not going back that far to go to the Ranger game first, let's just say. He's playing at that point, he's playing in his 3rd game out of 4 on the week. He's taken at least 2 hits at different points throughout the course of this week where he's a little slow. He goes over the bench. You can see him like he's in pain. He's clearly not at his best. Like health-wise, he can't be. He's not perfect. He can't be. Like he's taking hits. He's playing his style, and it's going to lead to you get beat up a little bit. And he's still maintaining the point total, and he's still like even without the part where we just go with like, oh, the most recent part where he's in whatever period of time it is that he's tied for the league lead in points. He's at 30 on the season, generally speaking, and that's a tie for 14th in the league.
And it's kind of unfortunate. You mentioned him being a little bit banged up. It's kind of unfortunate that he's not going to get 2 weeks off in February. But we will talk about that in a little bit here too. We do have one more game. We do have one more game to get to.
Yeah,
and that is the Saturday night game in St. Louis. So when you join a list that has Sidney Crosby. Who's on that? Okay, so
Sidney Crosby, Ilya Kovalchuk, and Rick Nash.
And Rick Nash. Is that a good list to join? Like, if you're the 4th player to do something, and those were the first 3, would you say that that's a good indicator for a player's goal scoring ability?
It probably doesn't hurt.
Okay, but just put, if you're listening here, just put a little pin in that, put that in the back of your head, and when we get to overtime, I'll come back to that one. So
sure, but how about I bring up the player that I know you're talking about because he sets up the first goal
he sure does
in just his way, right? So this was, Matvei Michkov did not play the last probably half of the 3rd period against the Rangers. They just rolled the forward group that was your defense first forward group. Here comes, even Morgan Frost didn't play down the stretch of that game. It was here's Sean Couturier, here's Scott Laughton, here's Ryan Poehling. I'm just John Tortorella just shoving down the throat of the Rangers. I'm going to hit you with my best 9 defensive forwards. Konechny's out there for it. Like I said, Laughton's out there. Hathaway's out there. Poehling's out there. You've got,
man, if you told me 26 months ago that Garnet Hathaway was one of your best 9 defensive forwards, I'd be stunned.
But he had, like, especially with the empty, he's a penalty killer. He can play.
He's been solid. No, he's been really solid. I agree.
I mean, even down to they went with let's go ahead and use Tyson Forrester, Bobby Brink, that kind, and Noah Cates to help finish that. There's another one, Noah Cates, who's, without the point totals, I get it. He's not putting up a crazy ton of points. He is defending like nobody's business, though, and he's really shut some things down over the last several weeks that make a huge difference in these games.
He's looking good.
But you go from that the night before to, again, it's like the scratchings. Michkov comes back against San Jose after 2 games sitting in a press box and puts up 2 points, scores a shootout goal too that helps him win a game, and it's like, okay, there's your response. There's your I'm back kind of moment. He got sat down for the rest of that game, and he comes back and he makes a play that it feels like only he can make, or only the guys in that stratosphere can make anyway. Like you're watching a pass that you see Connor McDavid make. The patience, the poise, tip it, knowing to go to the net, put your stick on the ice because this kid will find it if you give him the time and space to do it. And he gets the time. He keeps the space. He does enough deceptive things to keep the space, and then just threads the needle. Owen Tippett will not score an easier goal this season, short of an empty netter.
Right. And I do want to say I appreciate him getting one, right? Because like you need to see him start to warm up. And I think and I think he's coming. I think it's starting to come a little bit.
I think that his game that particular night was 5 times better right after he scored that goal. He's got jump. It's like, oh, I scored a goal. Now I've got some jump in my game.
And he scored early in the game, right? He didn't score a goal when they were down 4-1 to make it 4-2.
No, he opens the scoring.
He sets the tone on the road, scores an early goal, first 10 minutes of the game. You're looking to shut the home crowd down a little bit. They do that. I mean, that's the kind of goal that really, and again, it's off a nice setup, but you still need to finish the shot. Like it's a good goal for him.
And in a game that ultimately turned into a huge goalie duel for the next 40 minutes.
Insane.
You played 2 full periods from that goal and nobody could do anything. And it wasn't for lack of scoring chances. It was one great save after another from both sides. I mean, this was a first, if I'm not mistaken anyway, this was a first period where, again, the Flyers got off to like a good high shot total. It was like 9-3 at one point. And it's like, then all of a sudden, right toward the end of a period, just like on Friday, and Ivan Fedotov had to kind of weather that, like, I'm not seeing any action for a while kind of thing, and then make a few big saves. Alexei Kolosov does the same thing. He ends up in a spot where the action's limited. You get a few good scoring chances. He makes some big saves too, and that set it off. And now, not to try to skip over an entire period, but the goaltending really being the story. You get into the third period, and St. Louis finally has that moment. And what do you do to respond to it when they finally get the game tied? You come right back out and score another goal. And it might be a turnover. You might have to, and again, look who's leading the charge there. It's Bobby Brink and Tyson Forster again. Forster follows up a play. Brink makes the play initially that gets it to the net. It's like a half save for Binnington because it hits off the post first, but his glove's there also. So he's like, you get that. And Forster cleans it up and gives you the lead back. And that nearly lasts right through regulation. That was nearly your game-winning goal. And, I hate those situations at the end of a game where when the goalie, like in Kolosov's case, when a goalie gives one up after being right there to make a big save and just feels the weight of the world crash down on his shoulders in that moment. He face plants after it's over and just keeps his head down like, 18 seconds, right? Like I needed 18 more seconds, and I just couldn't get there. I want to win this game. It was going so well kind of thing. Interesting penalty call, by the way, that got them on the power play. I don't know if it, by the way, they missed 2 more after the fact but one on both sides, by the way. Like I'm being objective with it here. They missed 2 penalties because Forster totally trips up a Blues defender going back for the puck in the corner. Like, well, he's just trying to make life difficult on the penalty kill. He could have been called for that. Hathaway got clocked in the neutral zone with the puck nowhere near him. That was as he's chasing one down. That's an interference penalty. They don't bother to call that. We're going to call the ticky-tack holding penalty that, puts him on a power play with under 3 minutes to go, because that's the kind of game it had to be. But to then again respond effective immediately, you get into overtime as we get to this point that I know you are so desperately waiting for, because let's shift to it. What happened? Who scored?
So before we talk about the goal, because we will talk about the goal, I want to talk about the play from Travis Konecny, because Travis Konecny creates a spectacular play in the defensive zone, gets the puck, ends up, while he's falling, kind of pushing the puck out to center ice where Matvei Michkov awaits. And he had to hustle, because, man, Colton Parayko was coming.
I was impressed by that, by the way. I don't tip, like Parayko's. I'm not saying Parayko's not a
big boy.
I'm not saying he's not a good skater, but like that was next level skating.
Well,
he's moving like Makar in that moment, like busting it to get to that play.
And he's a big boy. He had to get the ball rolling. And
he nearly collides with a teammate to start it, so he kind of gets delayed, and he still ends up on his heels. He actually, I think he's going to do the only thing he can think to do in that spot to try to disrupt, which is probably take a penalty that would be a penalty shot, honestly, because I think he goes for a slash in there at some point, and he doesn't really hit him. He misses kind of, because Michkov's pulling the move at the same time he's trying to go for it, so he doesn't really connect with it, but he's going to do the only thing he can think to do in that spot, and he's close enough to do it.
Oh, it's insane. It's really, honestly, like, if you are Jim Montgomery, the head coach of the St. Louis Blues, bizarre.
I know, that's crazy.
Watching that tape, you have no issues with how Colton Parayko handled that. The hustle on that play was next level.
Yeah.
But it turns out so is Matvei Michkov's shot. It beats Jordan Binnington. That record I was talking about earlier, by the way, he becomes the fourth teenager in NHL history with 3 overtime game-winning goals as a teenager. He has, I think it's like 9 games to potentially get a 4th and break the record. He has also done it in far, far fewer games than
I was going to say that's the thing you want to talk about, because to me that's the most incredible part of the stat. It's not just it's not just the teenage. He's a teenager. He's got 3 overtime goals. It's none of that for me. I don't even need to put the other names on the list to just sit there and go, how does this sound? He's got 3 overtime game winners in 23 NHL games.
Remember how excited everyone was for Shane Gostisbehere?
I had
now imagine he's 4 years younger and a forward.
I had the exact thought earlier, because I was thinking there's an element where it was more impressive for Gostisbehere to do it, because he's a defenseman. It's not going to happen every time like that. He was a defenseman up on the rush too, no less, most of the time.
Though in overtime, especially, when he came out, the 3-on-3 was still pretty new.
Gostisbehere also scored 2 of his on the power play. Michkov only has 1. So Michkov has scored 2 goals at 3-on-3 legitimately. Then that's not to take away from like the year that it happened for Gostisbehere. It was, but your point is valid, because of everybody went crazy over, oh my goodness, it's him again, another overtime winner. It's him again. What did he do? Score 3 in a 10-game span? Something like that. It was something ridiculous.
It's insane. Gostisbehere mania took over the city of Philadelphia for a hot second. And by the way,
I'm actually going back to look, and one of the things I do know off the top of my head about that is I don't know where this parallel comes from. I can't explain to you how this happens the way that it does. I guess it's just fate this way. One of Gostisbehere's overtime winners that year was on Black Friday.
Oh, that is wild.
So it's the same time frame of year.
Even. I will say, by the way, just a little Shane Gostisbehere note here. I do have some family on the ground in North Carolina, and apparently the Ghost Bear emoji jerseys have popped up in Carolina as well.
Oh, nice. He's got a fan club down there.
Yeah, apparently they have really taken a shine to him, and the Ghost Bear emoji jerseys are starting to pop up pretty frequently. So it's good to see him carve out a spot for himself in the NHL, because I was worried he was going to end up being pigeonholed as kind of a one-dimensional, he's on your power play 1, he's on your second or third player.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was by the way, it was 3 overtime winners in 11 games for Gostisbehere.
That's pretty good.
He scored against Carolina on he scored against Carolina in overtime on, ironically enough, November 23rd, which is also a date that Michkov has scored one of his. So there you got that one. He scored on November 27th, which was Black Friday. They were playing there's a weird one for you, by the way. They were playing Nashville that year on Black Friday. That's not a typical matchup. And then he scored against Carolina again on December 15th. So there was, interestingly enough, then that means that there was actually a bigger, because it's less, right? It's fewer games. He scored now 3 game winners in what, 7-8 games?
Something like that.
I mean, from the Ottawa game, then they played Buffalo, Colorado, Carolina. He scored against Chicago, Vegas, Nashville, Rangers. It was 3. That's 3 and 9.
It's good, man.
Well, if he keeps doing this, we're gonna run out of words for him by February.
Right. I mean, like, and we talked about the fact that he's only a teenager for, I think it's 9 more games or something like that, or not something like that.
I'll get it for you.
But either way, he might start setting some rookie records, right? Like if he scores 6 or 7 of these throughout the course of the season, come on, the Calder's the lock.
He is only a teenager for a week, so he better make it happen pretty fast.
Listen, and it's a tough time for a 4-day break, honestly. You're telling me that Boston game's not going to overtime? Let's be honest.
Oh, thanks. Me with a flight to catch after the game, and you're gonna hit me with overtime.
Well, all right. So, is there anything else we want to talk about in St. Louis? Obviously, the game-winning goal, the overtime is kind of the big.
Well, because
story,
I think we just,
right?
I think we need to just because you're right. The play is really, like, most of the play is Konecny. We got to give
Konecny pushing that puck out is an insane play out of him.
Because it's one thing to break up the play and at least stop the rush that Robert Thomas is about to kind of complete in that spot. It's another thing to direct the puck, and he could just direct that thing out to the neutral zone where Parayko circles back and gets it. Right, and Parayko back and gets it. The thing about Michkov in that spot is he almost like not moves in slow motion, but almost just like lets time stand still for a second, because he stops, he positions himself to go, like seeing Konecny's going to make a play. He positions himself to go, keeps himself stopped to kind of see, does this go where I think it's going to go? And then as soon as it's parallel with him in the defensive zone, he's off and he goes and gets it. And then I love the move too. I love the move. I love the fact that he didn't know it went in the first place. I love the fact that the
scream of joy in the quiet building.
I was going to say, I love the fact that St. Louis has really good on ice mics that let you hear him scream like about scoring a game-winning goal.
There's something, listen, and I've been scarred since Stanley Cup Final 2010, but just the sound of players screaming with jubilation in an enemy building. Oh, like it's nice to be on the good end of it for once.
But it was
it was a spectacular play out of Travis Konecny, and I think it is. So I don't think it was that play in particular, because as you mentioned, Kyle Dubas was at the game on Monday night.
Oh, I know, but and before you shift to that,
okay,
because I'm still on Michkov for 1 second, because we can't talk enough about him, obviously, to a degree. I just kind of remember looking up at, as they replayed it about 20 times, obviously ahead of the post-game show, just like kind of having this moment where I was like I'm shaking my head at it too, going like, this kid can't be serious. Like, just has a knack for the moment. If there's anything else, he's not a perfect player by any stretch, and he is not a finished product by any stretch. He's 19, but he has a knack for the dramatic like nobody's business, and it is.
And he's a cold-blooded killer, and I love that about him. And I absolutely love it.
Yeah, by the way, that is a great like segue that you're giving right here too, because to drop the cold-blooded line a week ago and sit there and say, you know, when you get those chances, you've got to finish those chances. And
since then, he's 1 for 1.
But to go against a goalie like Binnington on that night, who had stopped everything, like to be honest, I don't know.
Joel Farabee stop?
2 of them. He stopped him on 2 breakaways in the third period, where they could have put the game away. Well, the Couturier one, I think is all. It's everything all at once. It's a great save. It's also, if you could just elevate that puck, you've got a goal.
Yeah, but he's still got to be there to make it. Right. I was going to say,
And it,
Binnington still has to
and,
be there.
and as much as everybody wants to, like, as much as you can pile on, oh, Couturier needs to elevate that puck. In the moment, it's reactionary.
You're pushing it at the net.
You are trying to put that thing on goal as quickly as possible while the net looks as empty as it does, and it hits the guy's glove. What are you gonna do?
Absolutely.
It's just sometimes it's a night where you're feeling it, and like to say, same thing on Kolosov's end for that game. He makes 2 saves right before they actually score the tying goal. That you're like, I thought the first one was going in.
Oh yeah.
The fact that the fact that I hear them on the broadcast freaking out over the save on the rebound first is like, oh my goodness, and what does that tell you, by the way? Now you've had the way that Fedotov handled the Ranger game, all the people that they've got on their side of things, talent-wise on paper, the way that Kolosov has played both the Nashville game and this game against St. Louis on the road, no less. Like, I think I gotta kind of dig. I guess it would be the Chicago game then. Is that, like, essentially, aside from his debut, the only game he's played on home ice? Like, he played Montreal at home.
So.
Well, okay, hold on. I stand corrected. He played Montreal at home. He finished the game against Boston that was at home. And then because he came in when Ersson got hurt. But other than that, I think he's played every game of his career on the road. And the last handful, he's played like the way you'd want to see a goalie play on the road. He's kind of cold-blooded killer in his own right. Like, he just has it running through his veins.
Yeah, if you follow the Flyers videos on social media and stuff, you'll know that the player of the game totem this year has been a championship belt, a WWE style championship belt. And the video that kind of did some rounds this weekend was after the St. Louis game. So Fedotov had been given the belt after his performance against the Rangers on Friday. Which
not only well deserved, but by the way, we're standing outside the room. He was the guy who I guess did a TV interview, something. So he's the last guy into the room. Thanksgiving was his birthday. So it was his 28th birthday. He goes into the room. We hear them erupt. They're singing one of those happy birthday song things, and like not the traditional one, but you know what I mean. They're having a blast with him and things like that. He's loose as anything. Like, he starts singing during his own post-game interview. It's funny. It was so funny. But he gets the belt because it also was his birthday on top of like that. Not to mention the fact, and he was asked about this, and he downplayed it a little bit. Like, it was special, but he wasn't making it like it doesn't matter kind of thing. Like, you want to win the game regardless. But he does it against Igor Shesterkin too. That's a big deal.
That's got to be nice as a Russian kid, right?
Well, he's older than Shesterkin is, so it's so more than anything, it's kind of a like you can tell, like, he knows him from past experiences.
Would they have been on the Russian juniors team at the same time?
I don't know about being on the junior.
Would they have been U20 together?
I don't know about all that. I've got to imagine that before Shesterkin came over, though, that they played in the KHL together at some point. Because let's put it this way, he talked about him like, first of all, full nickname usage, like, been around the block a few times, like, he's been, like, everybody knows how good he is, also like that. But he's like sitting there going, of course, Shesty's great, blah blah blah, and things like
he knows totally. So going into that game in St. Louis, Fedotov has the belt. He's been given it after his game against the Rangers. They win again in St. Louis, so it has to get passed on. Fedotov points at Matvei Michkov and hands him the belt. You scored the overtime winner. Like, obviously, you're getting the belt. And the first thing Matvei Michkov does is he holds it out and goes, "Nope, the PK was great. It was a really great game. Totally, you were the best player," and hands it right over to Kolosov. And man, if we don't call this episode From Russia with Love, what are we even doing?
Okay, we can do that.
But it just, the little pass between the 3 Russian kids who, like, Kolosov has had some, obviously there's been a whole lot of stuff surrounding his time in North America. And he's potentially felt a little bit isolated. I think it's really, really good for him to come have this extended look with the team, even if he ends up being the one who goes back to Lehigh Valley when Sam Erson's healthy. Even if they go down to 2 goalies, we'll figure it out. But regardless, I think he knows that he has brothers in Philadelphia, right? Like worst case scenario, you've got Fedotov, you've got Michkov, you've got Zamula, you've got a couple guys floating around that you can talk to, and I think that's going to be really, really good for him. Even like I said, even if he does end up going back to Lehigh Valley,
right? And he's easy. He's the easiest option to go back, so that's why that's a conversation. But I want you to.
He's been playing really well.
Well, I was going to say, can I read you off something, and you tell me if this sounds better than it was, and approaching the level where you can at least sit there and say you're good enough for this league, right? Like, because that was the question. Yeah. His whole thing coming in was he wanted to play right away NHL.
He wanted to prove he was an NHL goalie,
and he came over to camp late, and so he wasn't going to get much of a look being able to do that because they were already figuring out how to go forward with Ersin Fedotov, right? Like that's just how it was. And then you looked at his first handful of games, both in the AHL and once he got called up because of Ersin being hurt, and it's like
he looked a little shaky.
And it's just like, well, this is more of the same. It's, Fedotov's numbers weren't good at that time, and Kolosov was joining him. Kolosov's numbers after his last game are a 3-4 record, 3 wins in a row, by the way. He started 0-4.
Yep.
He has a 294 goals against average and an 891 save percentage.
Mm-hmm.
A 294 goals against average in particular, by the way, that'll play.
Oh, yeah. Their save percentage going to come up a little bit, but,
Right. And well,
against under 3 out of your backup / third guy.
And here's the thing. Fedotov's played way better of late, too, obviously. This goes to show how bad his first 3 games were more than like anything else, because he's played really well recently. Actually, believe it or not, at this point in time, he has as many wins as regulation losses now.
Okay.
So he's 4-4-1. That's his record on the season, and he lost his first 3 starts of the season also. His goals against average is 339, which I know that doesn't sound great, but his first 3 games were 5-5-4. And he's had a handful of 4s lately where some things break down. And he's played, let's not kid ourselves either, aside from when he played Ottawa and he scored a bunch of goals on him. Like it was, well, they took a lot of shots in that game. He actually finished with an 892 save percentage in that game, which wasn't half bad, giving up 4 on 37. And he gave up 4 on 37 again against Carolina, which is that's kind of just a shot volume thing. Giving up 4 against Vegas wasn't great, but the other games kind of in between, 1 against Tampa, 2 against Buffalo, 2 against Buffalo, where one of them was complete garbage time, by the way, like last minute material, and 1 against the Rangers.
Snapshot 12 months ago. What did Sam Erson's numbers look like?
Well, that's what I told you after the first 2 starts for Fedotov was
they still looked pretty tough because he had some rough starts. But this is kind of the point where he started to start some more games, and it started to come around for him. And it kind of seems like Fedotov's going through something similar.
So Fedotov's got a 339 goals against and an 881 save percentage, but that is seriously on the rise from his save percentage. Like I'll read you his game save percentage. We're not going to do the math on it, but I'll read you his 3 from his first 3 games. 839, 792, 826. So he had a sub 830 save percentage through 3 starts and has brought that up over 50 points in the last month, basically.
He has turned it around, and it's the kind of thing that when the whole team has moved in this positive direction, and we've talked about the defensive play getting better, we've talked about the goalies getting better, we've talked about some of your stars really elevating their game. The whole ship kind of turns around, and it seems like the Flyers are heading in the right direction.
Sure. And I want to, and before we get to the segment that you want to get to on like some of the other things to watch or whatever, this is how you end up in a spot like they are right now, because this, let's not forget. So this team what they start? They were 1-5-1 through 7 games. Yep. Then they were, that was through the first 7 games. That's almost the end of October already, believe it or not. Like it was pretty well into October. I mean, the 5th game of the season was October 19th. Then they're 4-8-1 after 13 games. They woke up on the morning of November 7th, at the very least in a tie for last place in the league. We were doing shows talking about draft picks in early November because frankly, not only had they not shown anything to justify anything better than that, we were coming on to talk about Sam Erson's not going to be able to play. So Sam Erson's hurt. Cam York is hurt. Jamie Drysdale's hurt. This, you're missing these guys. You're about to play a game the very night we're talking about. You're about to play a game without your most skilled offensive player. And I get he's 19 and you want to teach, but he's still your most skilled player despite all that. So you're going to take him out of the lineup deliberately. What kind of conversation do you expect us to have after a week like that, despite the win in a shootout without him and despite getting Florida to a shootout without him? What kind of week do you expect us to talk about? And they have played the next 12 games since that, going into that game on November 7th in Tampa. They are 8-2-2. That means, by the way, if you're keeping score, that's 18 standings points over the course of what did 12 games add up to for them? We're talking from November 7th to November 30th. We're talking about 21 days, 23 days. Like, it's not that much. You're talking a span of 3 weeks. They went from being bottom of the standings to actually holding a wild card spot. And just in time for us to get to the marker, right? Just in time for you to get to that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday of Thanksgiving weekend. Where do you sit when that's all said and done? Because I don't think it's fair to look at it on Thanksgiving morning and say that's what we're talking about right there. No, if you win the game the next day on Black Friday and you say we're in a spot after Black Friday, I'm counting that. You're close enough. That means you were there.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking about the teams that either firmly solidify their place by then.
Yeah, I've also seen some lists use December 1st, which would have been Sunday.
And they were totally there then too.
And that's what I'm saying, right?
Not to mention the fact that, well, not December 1st, but it was, I'm trying to remember if it was later. Yeah, I guess it was later on Friday because it was after the Ranger game. I was already home by that point. And the Bruins played the Penguins that night, and the Penguins are much more inferior at the moment, standings-wise anyway, and they got the win in regulation, and Boston just went back to the same number of games, which theoretically swapped places in the standings, and that put you in that spot. And I'm sitting there going, of course it did, because we were 3 weeks ago, we didn't have anything to say about this type of stuff. Now we're back. And to your point about the video thing, first of all, by the way, the video with Michkov and Kolosov and the passing of the belt and all that stuff like that. The pause by Michkov to look back at like anybody and be like, wait, I can do this, right? I'm allowed to just like, I know you gave it to me. I am allowed to pass it off.
Hand it off, right?
And the room loves it. So they're absolutely like, yeah, go for it, whatever. By the way, and I understand why it doesn't happen like for an interview or anything like that, but wasn't it great to hear him speak a little English?
A little bit of English,
and be able to communicate with his teammates in that way, in that moment? Like, I think that's awesome for him. That's a big time step for someone who's realistically only been around these guys since mid-September.
And you can tell the boys loved it too.
Sure. Oh, absolutely.
The roar that went up was a good one.
But this is where you are. And like, I look at the whole thing, 8-2-2 in your last 12 games. You're on a 3-game winning streak. You just won another game in overtime, right? Like all this type of stuff qualifying that goes into what creates that scenario, right? Like you're back into a playoff spot as November ends. You have a moment like that happening where the 19-year-old kid, one of the only guys that you can actually say was not in the room last year, to be something different, to not even have those vibes to go off of, and you got a very last year's vibe moment in that spot. And I cannot.
And Kolosov wasn't in the locker room last year either.
No, he wasn't. I'm not trying to take away from that part.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying is that locker room is in such a good spot right now that it's infectious, and that even guys who were not there last year have bought in, and we're doing stuff like we're handing off the player of the game belt, and everyone loves it. And everyone loves it.
To meet the vibe moment now and to kind of bring it back, like people that situation right there, on top of all the Michkov overtime goals, on top of all of that type of stuff, this is what will get people to really like this team. If they can keep this thing up, it will get people to really like this team. And
you know what else? You know what else gets people to really like teams? When a player does well in international hockey.
I think to your point, what we'll do really well is guys who make these types of teams, especially from the NHL roster. I don't think
absolutely
World Juniors is World Juniors, and we are going to get into that because I think for several years, I would say, I think it's safe to say it this way, for several years, there was a lot of vested interest in Team USA at World Juniors. There was a lot,
Absolutely.
even as recently as last year, when at the time a Flyers prospect was really lighting it up, and then that changed about 3 days later.
And we don't like that. Um, we'll see him in January.
Damn
Yes,
near on the
no,
anniversary, by the way.
I know.
So
Yeah,
anyway.
let's talk about Four Nations first, and then
Okay.
we'll touch on the
Well,
World Juniors
either way,
after.
my statement was going to be true anyway. I think there's going to be a
Absolutely.
lot of vested interest in Team Canada this time around
Absolutely.
for both,
So
potentially for Four Nations as well. At least if you're following for the Flyers, I should say that.
So, as of recording on Monday evening, these rosters are not official, right? I'm going to just say that right off the top here. These rosters have not been officially announced. We do not know anything definitively. All we have is a little bit of back padding at practice. But
Exactly.
those things seem to indicate that Rasmus Ristolainen, Travis Sanheim, and Travis Konecny have made their national rosters for Four Nations.
Right now,
Rasmus Ristolainen for Finland, and Sanheim and Konecny for Team Canada.
yeah. So now the rosters are officially announced on Wednesday, and but they have been submitted. So
Right.
it would not be a shock for, like, it was kind of and I'm not at practice obviously during the week, so I saw it on the clip after the fact, but somebody asks John Tortorella about the moment that you're talking about at the practice where they seem to be congratulating teammates or whatever, and Tortorella looks up and goes, "You guys got the information? I don't have any information." And like, and kind of as in a way to say, it's not out there yet, so I can't
I'm
speak
not telling you
I'm not
anything.
right. I
Yeah.
can't speak on the matter. So it's going to be out very soon. In fact,
Greg Saravelli will have it tomorrow.
so the by the way, so Finland and Sweden are being announced at 2 Eastern on NHL Network. Um
On Wednesday.
on Wednesday. So that will and let's put it this way.
Rasmus
Ristolainen,
Ristolainen's going to make that roster.
right. He was already very much projected to make that roster anyway. That's really not as much of a surprise. But for a while, he was pretty much the only Flyer that was really getting attention because, well, I mean, let's face it, there's a whole bunch of Russians on the roster now that don't have a team to play for in Four Nations, obviously.
Yes. And I'm really hoping, looking forward to the Olympics, that there is at minimum an Olympic athletes from Russia team just to give some guys a chance. But
Well, Michkov would probably get some consideration there. You have to imagine.
he'll make that team. In 2 years, he'll make that team.
Sure, of course. Now
I think he'd make that team now, but anyway.
I think he'd have a good shot at it as well. If
Yep.
you're trying to put together the best team possible for that. But anyway,
Best 12, right?
So but Team Canada, there wasn't any certainties. It was discussed, and you can't deny that the
Most projected rosters I saw didn't have any Flyers on it,
right and
to be honest.
and in fairness, it wasn't for a lack of look. The brass of these teams, or of Team Canada specifically, has been
And
out.
Team Canada is stacked.
Well, it is, but I'm saying this. They've been out at a lot of games the Flyers have played this year. They have done their homework here in terms of that. I believe one of the nights that they were out scouting. This was when I believe it was Doug Armstrong's the main GM and Dubas was assisting, I think, or something like that. So, but I think it was one of the nights that Doug Armstrong was in town. Was the night that after the game, John Tortorella said, "I hope Hockey Canada is watching," in regard to Travis Sanheim. Like in terms,
played a really good game
because he had played a really good game, and well, by all accounts, it appears that might be the case. So Sanheim was being greeted with that, and in fairness, like I kind of don't know which of these two feels a little bit or felt more felt less likely, because Sanheim had to really earn it. Obviously, he didn't.
Man.
Sanheim did not come in on any radar, I think, right away.
No.
I think he earned it by his play over the last month in particular.
Well, and I think Team Canada's defensemen are so good. That
Sure.
is such an elite group to crack that I just think it's so difficult.
Certainly.
Yeah, and like obviously, if there's twice as many forward spots, like
Right. So
that's obviously
that's
an
why
elite
I say
group
that because
too.
because
But
I don't think Sanheim was on the radar, period. I think Konecny was like modestly on the radar, but you just couldn't, like, you felt like, kind of as you discussed all the other players, you're like, I can't justify putting him on that team because
if you're listing the top 12 forwards, Travis Konecny coming into the season probably ends up in the 15 to 20 range. On
like,
the
I would be curious to see because if like assuming Konecny has made it like they hint
like it
at,
seems.
right. Well, you got to start to assume who's he playing with. He's playing with McDavid.
Oh man,
He's playing with McDavid. He's playing with Crosby. He's playing with McKinnon. They're making it. Like, there
it's
is
gonna be
no,
insane.
which tells you a lot about where
Oh,
Konechny's place is kind of among
and
you know what I think honestly too, and I think fans don't do this, but I think hockey people do. Like the people in the business side of it themselves do. Travis Konechny's made what, 3 All-Star games now?
see, I was about to bring up the All-Star game because I did want to say it's gonna be nice to see him playing against these guys or with these guys when the players actually care. And I assume in this situation the players will care because you're wearing your country's
Mhm.
sweater
It's very World
and
Cup of hockey. Yes, I got you.
and it's 5-on-5 real hockey. It's not a 3-on-3 tournament. It's not you have your country's crest on and you're
Sure.
playing 5-on-5 hockey for 60 minutes.
I just look at
And
these
I
things.
think Travis Konecny is going to shine.
I would love to see it honestly, but
Yeah.
like like I- I think like we do this. We do the, well, how do you see Travis Konechny fitting in when the rest of the list is McDavid, McKinnon, Crosby, you know, I'm sure you could possibly make an argument for like a Marchand or
I was
a,
going to say you have Marner there, you have
Marner and
Nylander
Neil.
there, you have
No, is Nylander going to play for Sweden?
I believe he is listed. Is he a Sweden guy? He
I
was
think
born in Calgary.
I
So
understand it, but
like
I think because of his father's heritage that I think he plays for Sweden in the international stuff, actually.
respectfully, it's stupid.
Well, whatever. We're
Sean
bypass that.
Couturier should play for Team USA. He was born in Phoenix.
But he
Sorry.
but he
Anyway,
doesn't. But he doesn't. So anyway.
I know, and obviously that time has passed in
But
his
I look at
career. But
what I'm trying to say is that I think we do this and say, how does he belong in that group? It doesn't feel like he belongs in that group. And I think every time he makes an all-star game and gets to do something like this, when it comes to hockey business people making these kind of decisions and players maybe even having a say in it to a degree, like an all-star game, like sometimes players get voted into that type of stuff.
yeah,
You got to pick stuff like right. I think that people around the game do put him into that category and sit there and say, well, look at where he ranks in points all the time. He's a pest to play against. I don't like playing against him because he's always out there doing stuff. He either gets under the skin of our team or he's scoring goals
where he's
against
got 3 points, right?
consistently now a 30 goal scorer. He's on track for it this year already, obviously. On track for more, obviously, but like being realistic, he's definitely on track for the 30. Probably on track for another 60 to 70 point season. He's consistent in that regard. Maybe he'll have more. I don't know. He's already at 30. You know, we're not even the third of the way through the season. He's already at 30.
He's on pace for 90 plus.
Yeah.
So
So
obviously that you don't expect that to necessarily hold up all year, but sometimes it does.
I think we say things like that because he's not McDavid, right? He's not
Sure.
take over the game guy like McDavid is, not in that same stratosphere, but he is good enough. I think it's to everybody else that they think he's good enough that they want him there and they want to establish that you're one of the guys, like you're one of the guys that in that market you fit in perfectly. You're a perfect Philadelphia Flyer.
Oh yeah.
And we need to market that.
Okay. I
I like
agree.
I think from their perspective, it's less about from like the perspective that we do this, that pundits do it, that the panels do it on the shows, all that type of stuff. And people who actually make the calls put him in that category every single time and don't think this is a surprise. Like
So then
if he
from your perspective, is Travis Sanheim the bigger surprise then?
probably, but like it's like I said, because to me he wasn't on the radar at all. I don't like he wasn't on the radar to be that. I would even go so far as to argue that the second that Cam York went down with an injury, we did on this show, and everybody else who has anything to do with the team probably came out and went, well, their most consistent and best defenseman just went down. What are they gonna do now?
And at the time, I think that was the call. Like Sanheim had been good, don't get me wrong, but I think
But
York
he's
had
turned it into
been
something else now.
he has stepped it up in Cam York's absence, and I mean, and subsequent return. Um, But
10
Travis
years
Sanheim has
post-draft.
found the next level, the next gear.
Defensemen have to age like wine. We're 10 years post-draft year for Travis Sanheim.
And we saw flashes of this. Was it last year or 2 years ago, where like 15 or 20 games through the season, he was like top 2 or 3 in the league in scoring amongst defensemen. I think it might have been 2 years ago, where he started.
Honestly, it might have been. There's
Was it 3
honestly.
years ago?
I was gonna say there's honestly a chance it was more than that because John
Oh, yeah.
Tortorella didn't. John Tortorella sure as hell didn't have anything nice to say about his first 2 years.
Was Alain Vigneault that coach? Oh,
It's possible. I mean,
it was only the first 15 or 20 games. It burned super bright and then it was gone. But regardless, we saw flashes of what we have now seen fairly consistently through the first quarter of the season.
Do you want to shift gears and start to touch base on the World Junior guys too, since that came up as well?
So it's pretty much just Canada, right?
So
far.
Because I think only the
prelim might make Finland's team.
Now Tuamala is too old to be in World Juniors.
No. You're right. I'm sorry. I was thinking of somebody else.
No, the guy who I would be thinking of is Jack Berglund could possibly be on Team Sweden in World Juniors because he would qualify. He just got drafted, so he would qualify. I haven't seen any rosters for or training camp rosters for Sweden, Finland, etc.
Well, as of right now, it seems as though 4 Philadelphia Flyers have been invited to Canada selection camp for juniors.
Right.
This is not the final roster, but I think we have a pretty good chance at least getting 3 of these 4 guys in here. So, from the London Knights, you have Oliver Bunk, who made the team last year.
Yep.
And Denver Barkey, who was one of the last cuts last year.
Yep.
You also have Carson Bjornsson as a potential goalie for this team. And you have Jet Luchenko, famous for making the team out of camp for a few games there, who is, I think he's fairly likely to make the roster, but is probably, let's put it this way. I think Bonk and Barkey are both pretty safe bets to make the squad. I think one of Luchenko or Bjarnason is pretty likely to make it, but maybe not necessarily both.
Yeah, so for me, Bonk is a lock. He'll be on the team. He was on it last year. He'll be on it this year. No doubt about it.
I think he'll probably wear a letter for that team to be
He has a decent shot of that. I don't doubt that. I think Barkey is closer to a lock now because after not making it last year and then having the second half of the year that he did. Yeah. And to be honest, I kind of struggle to see, on top of being invited back, obviously now for a second straight year, you're the captain of the London Knights. You're not just another London Knight player who comes in. You're the captain of the London Knights. And
that means something in the OHL.
I have to go back and check. I don't keep up with the OHL on a nightly basis, but I'm pretty sure I saw the other day. They're on a 15-game point streak.
I believe it was a win streak.
Or a win streak even.
I believe it was a 15-game win streak, which is insane.
Are the London Knights good, just like we always say about them right now?
I'm pretty sure they're the Willigan.
I'm looking it up really quick, by the way, just to
what's his face? The Leafs Easton Cowan, the Leafs prospect?
Yes.
Just had a point streak last over 1 year.
Oh, hold on, I got to go backwards. I'm sorry. It's from up here.
His point streak is over 365 days long. Are you kidding me? Yeah, so the London Knights are a good hockey team. But yeah, so it 4 Philadelphia Flyers prospects have been invited.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. It's 18 games. It's 18 wins in a row. I'm not kidding.
Well, so the 15 graphic was a couple of games ago. Okay.
Right. No, I'm just saying I knew I saw that.
And it is wins, it's not points.
Unless I'm misreading something, I'm looking. And they're dominating.
Holy smokes.
There are games where they're dominating.
They won 10-3 the other night, didn't they?
10-3.
Denver Barkey had 5 points.
Yeah.
A goal and 4 assists.
As a matter of fact, there's an easier way for me to look this up than to do that, because I do follow them on socials, and they have one of the better social in-game kind of thing.
Yes, they do. They're consistently.
and why is that? Because like they're one of the historic junior. No, they're one of the historic junior teams, generally speaking. Like
they're the New York Yankees of the OHL.
I was gonna say they get like NHL treatment.
They're the Los Angeles Lakers of the OHL. They're the Toronto Maple Leafs of the OHL.
Yeah, there's the graphic, 18 in a row.
Yeah. So the captain of that team and one of the ultimate captains of that team are Flyers prospects who may or may not make Team Canada. And as expected, Team Canada is very likely going to medal. It will very probably be gold or silver. There's really not much else to say about it. Team Canada is going to be a wagon, and this year they got 4 Flyers on it. Well, 4 Flyers in camp.
By the way, this is all happening with Denver Barkey not playing close to the pace that he was on a year ago. Like he had.
Well, I believe he's taken a little bit of a backseat as far as his role on the ice goes.
It's possible.
A little bit.
Well, let's not forget also he came back into that situation and had to have started slow because he couldn't get on the ice for the longest time because of mono, which does not do you any favor.
A little bit of time.
So him being 21 games, 28 points is still very good, all things considered. Obviously, you're over a point per game. That's and see, you know what it's going to be for him if you can get past the first 3 weeks, month of the season where he probably didn't play near that level because he's still recovering, all that type of stuff. And he got back late too. Like they kept him up in Philly for like the longest time during the preseason, even though he wasn't able to play. So he finally comes back. And like what you brought up, he comes out and starts having 5-point games. That'll change really fast. Like that's what he was doing on a regular basis for a while last year. And if he starts doing that again, that'll make a difference. And
quite frankly, if the Flyers stay organizationally as thin at center as they are, I expect him to get a long look next year. Like if Sean Couturier and Morgan Frost are still your 2 best centers going into camp next year, I expect Denver Barkey to get a nice long look.
Oliver Bonk also is a 6 goals, 21 points in 22 games. And see, the thing is like, then like London's schedule does not go 18 wins and then they played 4 games the rest of the time being. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, these guys did not play the entirety of the season. Like, you got guys who were building numbers because they were playing more and maybe did change some things up with the roles because it's like, hey, this guy's played really well. I'm not taking him out of this, you know.
Oh.
You know, like however quickly Sam Dickinson was sent back, right? Like, you go back sooner than everybody else does. I mean, that's going to make a difference. They were given at the same time that stuff was happening. They were giving Oliver Bonk another preseason game.
Absolutely.
I mean, the same thing's going to apply to Jet Lachenko being on that group. Like he didn't get back right away.
No, he definitely got a little bit of a late start to his junior season, but okay, but I think the motto here is that the future is bright in Philadelphia, right? There's a big injection of talent coming out of Canada over the next couple of years. Obviously, 1 or 2 of those players are going to make a run at the NHL squad next year. The rest are probably going to end up sorting into Lehigh Valley at some point.
And by the way, it's very telling. I gotta kind of dig, I guess, because I don't remember seeing it. Or like I don't remember where I would have seen it to get like a full list, but some of the names that were not on that camp roster.
Wild. T.J. Ginla's not there. Barrett Senecke's not there. It's crazy. Or Bennett Seneke, I'm sorry.
There was another one too. There was something about there was like Macklin Celebrini being number 1. He was never going to go back because he's playing at the NHL. They're going to want to keep him there.
Of course.
And then it turned into like every other guy in the top 10. Like Zane Parekh didn't make it.
Parekh didn't go either. Yeah.
Right. Like he didn't make it. Like there was a whole group of them like that. Like
it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah. And but the 13th overall pick made it. You know what I mean? Like they skipped over all these other guys in the middle. T.J. Ginla was number 6 overall. Seneke was 3rd overall.
Maybe Team Canada's looking for something specific.
I guess. I don't know.
Maybe they're trying to build a very specific kind of team. But
maybe it's about leadership. Honestly, who the hell knows?
maybe.
Although I
right.
can't imagine TJ Ginla is a bad leader, but like you know what I mean. Like
But you never know.
yeah,
All right.
I guess so.
So the future's bright in Philadelphia, and that does include a couple of hockey games this week.
Yep.
I mentioned a couple of days off. The Flyers will resume on Thursday at home against Florida, and then you have Boston on Saturday in Boston, and you're home right back home to play Utah on Sunday. We talked a little bit before the show. We will probably record next Monday after this little batch of games. So you can find us right here at the same
Yeah,
time, same place, all
because
that.
because a legit 3 and 4 for me, with the travel is going to probably not do me too good for doing a show on Sunday in the middle of all that. So let's just let the game roll. By the way, public service announcement for the listeners just announced today. Sunday's game is now at 7:30, not 7 as listed on all the schedules.
It has been bumped back a little bit. It will be a 7:30 start. So you can take your time getting down to Wells Fargo Center on Sunday.
Presumably because of an Eagles game at 1 o'clock and
that they're going to try to clear out as much as
traffic
possible.
situation, but I don't want to make assumptions on that. Mostly just because there could be a variety of reasons. I didn't check. Like they'll be back from Boston in plenty of time from a 1 o'clock game. I was actually
that won't be a problem.
But I'm curious. I don't know. Like I don't know Utah's schedule off the top of my head. Utah's in Buffalo at 1 also, so it's not really.
Won't be an issue.
It shouldn't be a timing issue of somebody getting in. I think it's more.
If they really need to, both teams can bus. It's about 6 or 7 hours. So,
well, from what I can understand, weather's not an issue either in this.
Well,
situation.
just in case.
At least for now. At least for now, I don't know.
Of course, but regardless, looking at the schedule, you have Florida, the defending Stanley Cup champions. They were going through a little bit of a divot the last time the Flyers met up with them, and they ended up going to overtime. Flyers ended up winning that game.
No, they lost that one.
I'm sorry, they lost that one on the show. They beat Tampa. That's what it was.
Right.
But you took them to overtime. You got a point out of them. They have since rebounded and are starting to look a little bit better. So that game might be tough. It depends on what goalie you get. Boston is still kind of going through it a little bit, and then Utah is probably a team that's about on your level. So it'll be an interesting week.
And that's a great way to kind of get me to one of my points because. So they're 12-10-3 after this 8-2-2 run, right? Which has them in a playoff spot at the moment, right? I'm going to give you what their record was after an additional 13. Like they played 25. They play 13 games in the month of December. I'm going to give you what their record was after adding after 38 games last year, because that's what they'll be at the end of December. And then I'm going to give you the record that they would need to have in the month of December to match that this time around. So they were 19-13-6 after 38 games last year. To match that record, they would need to go 7-3-3 in the month of December.
Listen, as I'm just quickly kind of glancing through the rest of the month here.
I'm curious where you're going to go with this because I have something written down. I want to see how much we have in common with this. Go ahead.
I think Columbus is a winnable game. Detroit's a winnable game. Detroit again is a winnable game. You got Columbus again, Pittsburgh, Anaheim, San Jose at the end of the month. You think? Listen, if they win all the games they should, I think they should. I think they'll hit that number. If they lose one or two of the games that they should win, but they win one or two of the games that they probably shouldn't win, I still think there's a real chance they break even this month. I think there's a chance that they significantly outpace that this month, to be completely honest with you.
Very distinctly possible. I look at the exact list of games you presented. I also threw the Boston game in there because Boston is still kind of an up and down team. And you know what I call that also? Boston is on your level. You are mostly tied in the standings. You know what I mean? So they're on your level. Utah,
they're just as volatile a team as you are.
Right. Yep. So I really come away from a month of 13 games with 4 games that are against significantly better teams. 2 against LA, Minnesota, who's tops in the league right now, and Florida, who has the same point total as LA. You find a way to win one of those 4 games and take care of your business the rest of the way through. I don't see how they're not still in the playoff picture when we hit the new year.
It certainly seems that way.
You know what I mean? And that's the thing. It would just come down to whether or not they hit a lull in a different way and start losing games against teams that you think they should handle. Otherwise,
and then as every other team in the league, of course, there is also, if an injury hits, if blah 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 blah, this is still a pretty fragile team, and if God forbid, knock on wood, you lose one of your top 2 or 3 forwards and you're one of your top
Right.
2 or 3 defensemen, all of a sudden we're having a whole different conversation. We're right
I
back in
don't.
the James Hagan sweepstakes.
No, I am not going to try to speculate on the number of like which way some of the losses of this may go.
Sure.
But again, you're at 25 games played on the season so far. At the halfway point of the season last year, which this year will extend into early January by just a handful of days. You had 21 wins in 41 games at the halfway point. That's 9 wins by that point. Is that doable?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why I'm saying I'm not going to
if Sam Erson's coming back, right?
Erson is a distinct possibility for Thursday.
Well, that's what I'm saying. You've done a lot of this over the last 2 or 3 weeks without your starting goalie, and your other 2 guys have looked pretty good, and you're paying for those to have to look pretty good. So but you get your starting goalie back. If Sam Erson looks anything like he is close to 100%,
I mean, you
have a really good team on your hands.
Not only with the goaltending, you've won at least one, probably 2 games on this stretch, I would say, where your defenseman included 2 guys who started the year in the AHL that you would not have put on your radar for anything. Like you brought Emil Andre up, you had Helge Granzin, you're winning games with them.
Yeah, and we didn't mention it during the discussion, by the way. Emil Andre never plays another game for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, as far as I'm concerned.
I think
barring injury rehab.
I mean, I'm with you. It's very hard to send him down at this point. I think they've got a tough decision to make there. Grans was easy. I thought Grans played well in the call up, but it's still easy. It's a numbers game.
He's an AHL guy who looked fine for a while.
It's the same thing as Anthony Richard. Hey, he played well when he was up, but we just by the numbers, we cannot keep this guy.
And I'd rather have Grans playing in Lehigh Valley than in the press.
I'd love to see what it does for his game. I'd love to see if it changes anything. I mean,
I hope he goes down there and dominates the AHL because he knows he can play.
I know you're saying you hope that's the case. I do also sit there and think though that there's an element where John Tortorella is right about that, where it's some guys come up and are just better NHLers than they ever were minor leaguers, and it doesn't have any rhyme or reason to it. It just
that's fine. The game is just different.
It just equates in a different way for whatever reason, and he looked really good for being a guy that in the preseason I thought did not play that well down the stretch. Made himself a very obvious cut. He played perfectly well at one point.
Looked really good.
There was a game. I think it turned out to be. It was a game. I think it was a game that turned out to be a loss in the grand scheme of things. The Colorado game, maybe. He got an assist because he was making his debut that night. He got an assist. I actually put him as one of the 3 stars that I do for the station.
It looked solid
because he had a really good debut and he had an assist to show for it. And I'm like, I got to throw you in on this thing. I don't.
Yeah,
just.
It was a wild week or so there because there was a brief period of time where the team hadn't quite turned it around yet. And people were looking at Helge Grans and going, well, they got to trade Jamie Drysdale. How are they going to Grans is 2? How are they going to? And obviously that's insane. But
he by the way, he's another guy that's got to be getting close at this point because I just don't understand why you wouldn't keep Grans around as another body if you didn't think I can put Drysdale in at some point.
Yeah, Jamie Drysdale is starting to get concerning, but
also who comes out? York Sanheim, Ristolainen, and Andre. They've been great. You keep that top 4 united. Now you're into Sealer, Zamula.
I was gonna say, I think
Sealer Drysdale, right?
I was gonna say, I think he gets in over one of Zamula or Sealer. Obviously, he gets in over Johnson.
Right, so Zamula Johnson would be your 4th pair, your extra pair, and I think Drysdale plays with Sealer, but it's 3rd pairing, and you stick with Andre Ristolainen and York Sanheim.
Respectfully to Jamie Drysdale, I think that's a good thing.
I don't think it has to mean it's a bad thing either.
Right.
Some guys unlock different things for different reasons. We did not notice the Rasmus Ristolainen we are seeing right now until Cam York was out, and it was better step up. And he stepped up in a big way. Now he's playing that way with somebody else. It's not even the same guy you started him out with, like playing him next to Sanheim. Now he's with Andre, and that's working.
I agree.
Andre had, I think when Andre starts, you'd bring him up and you think I'm putting him next to Eric Johnson because that's just the easy thing to do. I'm slapping him to the 3rd pairing. And then he's a good enough puck mover that you're sitting there going, I can't do that. I want him with Risto.
And my only issue with Drysdale, well, my biggest issue with Drysdale, not my only issue. My biggest issue with Drysdale is I'm concerned. The injury thing is starting to concern me, and I think an extended period of time, maybe the rest of the season if the things are going well, on the third pair, I think will be good for him.
Mhm.
Lower his minutes, lower his workload a little bit, let him get healthy, fully, truly, legitimately healthy. Okay, so I think that is actually a great place to put a pin in it this week.
Yep.
We have
There is.
a couple of games between now and our next show. Um, Hopefully Jamie Drysdale returns. Hopefully Sam Emerson returns. Hopefully the winning ways continue.
Mhm.
Was there anything else that you had for us here, Kevin?
No, I fully expect to see you sharing all of my stuff over on whatever socials you're running over on either platform. When
Absolutely.
I check in from Boston over the weekend, but other than that, no. I mean, because that'll be a little bit different than my usual on occasion check in from, the Wells Fargo Center again. Typical. Like it's comes old hat after a while, and then you go off and you do something like that.
Well, you can make sure to follow both of us. Follow us at YWT Podcast. That is on Twitter and Blue Sky and everywhere else. Kevin is at Kevin_Durso everywhere except Blue Sky, where he is at Kevin Durso. Real quick, favorite Thanksgiving side. Go. Did you hear me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I think we froze for a second. Favorite Thanksgiving side. Go.
I mean, I'll just stick to tradition. I'll just go with mashed potatoes because it's just a classic.
Okay. See, I'm whipping out the can opener. I'm busting open that can of cranberry sauce and just dumping the can right on the
I'm
table.
not well. See, that's my wife's favorite. My wife will have cranberry sauce in any month of the year, not just November. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, if people make it for me, I will absolutely have it. So, all right, we will be back next week. Tweet at us your favorite Thanksgiving side. Why not? At YWT Podcast, like I said, at Kevin_Durso everywhere except Blue Sky at Kevin Durso. Find us everywhere you find your podcast, including sportstalkphilly.com. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us over there. Hit the button, hit the bell, etc., etc. All right, that'll do it for us today. We'll be back next week. We'll see you. Flyers are making the playoffs.